inaugural members of the Australian Championship. We had some more news drop on this during the week. The guys from the Gantry, the NPL New South Wales podcast, they're reporting from an anonymous New South Wales Foundation Club executive a bunch of information on the competition. They confirmed the $500,000 bank guarantee had been returned to the clubs. This is, of course, a concession of the costs in the different models between the Champions League and the home and away system. They're saying that the home and away league would have cost in excess of $1 million per team, whereas the Champions League model falls well below of that 500,000 mark. They also said that another RFP phase, I believe that would be the fourth now in the timeline, would be conducted in 2 years, which is perhaps where that 2-year timeline has come from that we heard from other rumours in this model. So the Champions League model, we kind of assuming now will be for at least 2 years, and that'll be another phase of evaluation to see if we can expand it to a home and away season. There's also news that potentially the broadcaster could be announced as soon as the next 2 weeks, and that will be on streaming. Of course, that doesn't quite go as far to say whether that is free to air or behind a paid subscription as well, which I know will be a hot topic for many. And that this was a little bit more loose on details, but some kind of transfer window to be introduced at some point between the NPL and the Australian Championship seasons. We know that the transfer kind of windows don't line up amazingly with NPL football. They play about 2/3 of their season before their mid-season window. So I guess to have a little bit on the end in between the competitions, I guess it makes sense because they're going into this Australian Championship. But there we go. There are all the updates that we got from the Gantry boys. Paletti, I don't know where you want to dive into this. I think obviously confirming that the money going back is an important thing, and then it's probably that 2-year timeline as well.
Geez, where to start? That is the $1 million question, or the $500,000 question, which has all been refunded to the clubs. Look, I think it's I think you need to start with this idea of there being another RFP phase. They've had 3 of them already. Which is why
they have to set a longer horizon.
I understand that prospect. Where I'm trying to think of a way to word it that's not going to make me any more enemies. If you have 3 RFP phases and you've only come up with 8 clubs, surely at some point then you have to look at the entry criteria and think, have we been too tough on it? And I know that's probably a contentious thing to say when we've got potentially the 4th A-League club in the competition's 20-year history folding, that it's like, well, no, we don't want this competition to fail. We don't want clubs to fold. We have to be strict with the criteria. We have to be so stringent with it to make sure that the competition doesn't fail. But then you have to ask, again, if you can only find 8 clubs with that stringent criteria, you either need to, in my opinion at least, you either need to relax the criteria or don't have the competition. For me, I think that's, if you're going to do a 4th phase, what's going to change in a year and a half if we've got a team in the next stage up, the A-League, 2 or 3 weeks away from potentially folding, and then we get to Canberra United, that would, they were barely saved by the ACT government to run for another year. So that will be, I think it's like the 4th straight year in the off-season of Canberra United's future, potentially up for debate again. So that would be 5 teams in 20 years or 21 years of the A-League that have folded. So I don't know. I think having to say that you've gotten to this point, I think the question has to be what's going to change in 2 years if we've got...
This is the thing, right? They will have played some football, and that might open some eyes as to the value in the product, and maybe bring in some clubs and people who perhaps didn't think that there was going to be much of anything to put any money into it. All of a sudden go, actually, we quite like what is being built here. They were perhaps maybe a little bit pessimistic and reluctant to start with, but once they actually can see the product, they go, actually, I can understand that now, and you might get some new and different people in. We've seen a few different places try different like merger bid type things as well, which at the time were a bit rushed and weren't particularly well fleshed out. I know that was definitely the case here in South Australia. So, you know, it's going to give those sorts of bigger decisions a chance to actually work, you know, and get things together and sorted. So I think that, yeah, just like you said, Lockie, it's kind of setting that longer time frame almost for it. It just gives it a chance to actually, you know, prove its value and prove its worth to some people who perhaps at this point in time don't think that there is any value there. And that's why that, you know, maybe they haven't even been involved in these RFP phases so far. But all of a sudden they go, actually, maybe we should try our hand at this because we can see that there's actually something good going on here. You know, it's a good competition, good clubs, it's run well, getting good crowds, playing good football, getting recognition. We want a part of this. So, I mean, like that's kind of, I presume is part of the thinking, right? Is that, well, hang on, we'll have something to be able to show people and say, look, this is what we can do, right? And this is what the competition is. And with your help, we'll be able to make it bigger and better and turn it into a proper home and away season.
I think on the entry criteria for the championship, it is absolutely important that these teams are entered into the competition on some kind of guarantee or very firm, you know, promise that they are able to be sustainable. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the standard Football Australia have set is representative of that goal. Were they being overcautious in the bars that they are setting to ensure, you know, beyond doubt that what is happening in the A-League at the moment does not happen in the Australian Championship? Who knows? Only the people that have actually know the exact numbers and the figures behind that criteria can tell us. But, you know, we have heard clubs say that it doesn't appear financially viable for them. So the safeguards are there. Again, do they lower that down? Do they lower the bar to allow more teams in? In theory, if they've stuck to it for this long, they must be pretty confident in what those levels are. But again, it doesn't completely disclude the idea that perhaps their bar was very conservative to begin with, which is not inherently bad, but now you've put yourself in a position where you probably can't do anything about it. So it is very tough, but you know, we tick along. We all want this competition to succeed at its best. It's going to be awesome. It's going to allow a new platform for that kind of middle tier of football in between the A-League and the NPL. And hopefully we get a really positive and successful version of it in 2025. And we can kick on with it next year and hopefully get those clubs involved for home and away in the season afterwards. I want to touch on the broadcaster as well, Paletti. It appears we're going to get some information potentially in the next couple of weeks. We've talked plenty about the potential destinations for it. You know, originally we were under the impression that the championship was going to be packaged in with all the national teams, and that deal that ended up going to Paramount. We probably don't know exactly for sure that didn't happen, but it was definitely not announced when that deal was done. There are some other options in terms of streaming platforms. Most terrestrial networks these days have those options on the side of some kind of website that has the capability to stream games. But maybe a paywall opinion for you. Obviously, we've talked about the target demographic that is targeting these things, and I know there's always conversation about this, and during the Australia Cup as well. 1 in every 4 games was exclusive to Paramount. I know people are complaining about that because of the significance to them, especially for some of these NPL sides. But we're constantly complaining as well about the financial state of the league and Australian football. They got to earn their money somehow, right? So personally, I don't mind if it's behind a paywall, but what's your opinion?
I have to be careful how I approach this because I understand that I'm in a position where, as someone who receives income from football media, I have the luxury of being able to write off my Stan Sports subscription and my Paramount Plus subscription as a tax benefit because I need them to do my job. So for me, yes, you know, I wouldn't want to have to subscribe to a third service to watch this competition, but if I need to, I also understand that I can write it off on tax, and you know, the average punter the average fan who just wants to watch the games doesn't have that luxury or that benefit in a cost of living crisis. That being said, I don't see a universe where this doesn't end up at 10 Paramount. I think that's where it goes. I think I believe, if my memory is serving me correctly, that when they were having the discussion on From the Gantry, that there was no talk about this product ending up on YouTube or anything like that. Like, it was going to go to a streaming service or, like, you know, a broadcasting service, right?
Yeah.
Does that look like, you know, it's Channel 10 puts one game a week on free-to-air TV? Do they, you know, we know they're going to have a Saturday afternoon game and a Friday night, like, it's going to be a Friday night game, a Saturday afternoon game, and then Sunday afternoon early slot, Saturday evening slot, Sunday evening slot, right? That's what I remember from the press release. So does Channel 10 look at this and go, okay, 3 p.m. free-to-air Australian Championship game, A-League Men game number 1, A-League Men game number 2.
Yeah.
And you have a Super Saturday and the rest of the games are behind Paramount Plus paywall. Or that, you know, you might have another one of them on 10 Play or something like that, right? Just that's probably the most likely outcome, is it's 1 or 2 games a week that are available for free. The rest of them are behind a paywall until the finals or the knockout stage of the competition, however you want to work it. Finals probably on free-to-air. Like, basically the Australia Cup, but, you know, with the championship branding is how I see this probably playing out. That's with no inside knowledge of the negotiations or anything like that. That's literally just what we heard on From the Gantry. That's probably the most likely scenario I can see it playing out as.
Yeah, I just went back and looked at the press release. I think they've only described it as a Saturday afternoon game rather than given a specific time slot.
Right.
But that would make sense, right? Like, imagine as you say, the 3 o'clock into the 5 o'clock into the football tonight fever show, whatever it was, with the panel, and then the 7:35 kickoff. Sounds like a good day.
And it's Jacob. Still, I think the important thing about that is that it's still early enough in the season where you can have that 3 p.m. kickoff, because otherwise you're looking at you're looking
to the
heat.
point where we're just complaining about the heat again.
Yeah, exactly. You're hurting your own product, right? So it's early enough in the season where you can, or, you know, in the calendar, right, where you can have that kickoff. Yeah.
Jacob, what are your thoughts?
I've seen a couple of people that are a little bit annoyed that it's not going to be, you know, it's all free to air, or as it's also, you know, got to have your expectations set somewhere. Like you said, Lockie, you know, at least it means that there's revenue coming in some respect to drive it, but also it's like, we're not getting the Australia Cup all on free to air. We're not getting the A-League all on free to air. You know, like, we're not getting all the Socceroos games on free to air. So I think the expectation is there that in a fantasy land, sure, we would all have loved to have had the championship all on free to air or whatever. But it's going to be on a streaming service. That's it. That's kind of where all sports around the world really are headed nowadays anyway. So yeah, look, I can't say I'm overly surprised. I'd like all these ideas we're floating around though about this Super Saturday. It does sound like a good afternoon of football. So, you know, if anybody higher up is listening to this, you know, we all give it an endorsement. So.
I think as well, like, at some point you just got to be excited about supporting. Maybe not your club, right? There will be a lot of people that will be supporting their clubs in this competition, but just supporting the good of the game as well.
Yeah,
and that's 100%. The other thing. The better that the streaming service does is the more money that ends up on the bottom line this year that, you know, people will see and get encouraged by, and hopefully new teams will come. So there's dominoes to all these things.